Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Board Masters with me, Chris Mullins, and today I wanted to talk about, the hottest game around at the moment, and that is The Witcher Old World. But I also want to talk about another game that I've become aware of in the last month or so, which is, in my opinion, a better adaptation of the source material than the actual official game, and that one is Silvercoin Age of Monster Hunters. Now, I just want to spend a minute just to talk about sort of my history with the license of The Witcher, which may explain my love for it and why I'm probably a bit over the top maybe on why I'm so disappointed by the Witcher Old World. So basically I followed the franchise since the Xbox 360 days. I very, very rarely make any sort of impulse purchase, especially for like a video game or anything, but there was one day up at Asda with the wife and browsing the video game section as you do, I saw a game with a very fancy cardboard sleeve, excellent artwork, hugely detailed RPG, that is the type of genre I love, and I was in the middle of games, and so I grabbed it, and that game was The Witcher 2 Assassins and Kings. And got home, turned it on, and what followed was probably 3 or 4 of the worst hours of gameplay I've ever played on a console. Honestly, the tutorial in that game is horrendously bad. The difficulty is so hard. But once you get through that, it opened up into an absolute masterpiece with 2 completely different story structures depending what decisions you made. And yeah, it was a masterpiece. And then obviously The Witcher 3 comes along, and whilst it doesn't have the same branching storyline, it gave a much bigger world, open world, whereas the first one, Witcher 2, was sort of in hubs, which was really nice. I was quite intimidated by the open world of The Witcher 3 for a while. I was a bit nervous to start it, but once I did, again, just an absolutely phenomenal game. Just adored the cause of the series, where exploring every blade of grass, turning every stone in that world just to see what was going on, and there was always something to discover, and the exploration was such a key part of why I loved the game, and also like the strategy and the research that was required to go into the main battle. So you had to make sure you knew about the enemies so that you had the right oils on your weapon, you had the right magics to set to your favourite, or the right signs, I should say, the right bombs, the right potions, etc., to make sure that you are prepared for these incredible monsters that outmatch you completely. And I spent, I think, 130 hours getting the platinum trophy on The Witcher 3, and then read through all the books, and obviously I thoroughly enjoyed the Netflix series, which is obviously more linked to the books than the games, and can't wait for season 2 of that. So when I heard of The Witcher, the board game, within a few months of me getting into the hobby, I was so hyped for this. I was nervous when they said competitive, because I think, like a lot of people, it didn't really feel natural, and to be honest, the idea of brawling witchers does put me off a little bit, but I could easily get past that. I mean, the issues I have mainly, and I will stress, I haven't played the game. I'm just getting my information from the campaign, the pre-campaign materials that they released, as well as the reviews with Boardgameco and Quackalope, and also the Angry Gamer, and the playthrough videos the official playthrough videos, and the Jesse and Alex's playthroughs as well. Again, I'll link to everything down below. But it just seems like those cores of exploration and research don't really exist in this game, as far as I can see. I mean, you can see on these monsters, the Leshen, player lowers the defense by 1. The Griffin, during the entire fight, the player's combat level is reduced to 1. So they all have their own ability, but there's nothing about actual weaknesses. There's nothing about immunities, like the Fiend is immune to Ard signs. But his ability is that if the monster is defeated, the player suffers fatigue. So presumably there's nothing actually in the game stopping you use an Ard sign card, which is just baffling to me. And it's just not The Witcher. And then, you know, they have the board. Let me see if I can find it. Probably down below. All the stretch. They've unlocked so many stretch goals. I mean, they are absolutely killing this campaign, to be fair. And I really do hope that everyone backs this, loves it, loves the game, and it really lives up to their expectations, because they are absolutely smashing it. And I hate being negative. I can't find the board now. Okay. Ignore that. There's a snippet of the board anyway. But, I mean, like I think it was Jesse said in the review, at no point is anything on the board really out of reach. So in one turn, you will regularly see people bouncing around cities like this, and they'll bounce around 4, 5, 6 cities if they've got the appropriate gold to pay for travel, or the right cards that give them movement. And, you know, they can pretty much get from one end of the continent to the other in one turn. And for me, that's just not The Witcher. That's just completely at odds with the fundamental philosophy of exploring the game. And then you get into the enemies, and obviously we've already seen the abilities, but I wanted to cover this because in one of the stretch goals, they've brought in enemy weakness tokens, and basically you have a bunch of these tokens, and they sit on the map in matching terrain areas. You then go to a token and you read one of these weaknesses. So learning one weakness just tells you that fiends live in thick forests, swamps and bogs, and you gain a gold. Okay, I mean, it doesn't really help you, but alright. A fiend's only weakness is its fear of loud noises. Bombs such as salmons or devil's puffball are thus quite effective when fighting this monster. And yeah, absolutely right, it's taken straight from the game. But they've acknowledged that the fiend is weak to salmon and devil's puffball, but that isn't reflected at all in the combat of this game. And I mean, yeah, they noticed down there, fiend's enormous heft also makes them invulnerable to Ard. But as far as I can see, in the game, they're not invulnerable to Ard. There's just another one in the chain. And again, it's so against the Witcher philosophy for me. And, you know, another one of the stretch goals, they've added bombs now. So we have the Fiend, who is weak against the Devil's Puffball. You have the Devil's Puffball, but it doesn't make any difference whether you're using it against a Fiend or a Leshen or a Necker. And, okay, I get it. They've gone for a lighter game to appeal to the mass market. A lot of people are going to be buying this game who aren't part of the hobby. And this will be, as Alex and Jesse said, a light game, a great introduction to the hobby, and by all accounts a very fun game. But it's almost like they've taken this franchise that they know has huge mass appeal, dumbed it down massively to the point where the cause of the actual Witcher video games that made the IP as popular and successful as it is, and abandon those philosophies in order to, I don't know, appeal to, I hate to use the term cash grab, because people have a very negative connotation, understandably, and I'm not for any second suggesting this is like a licensed video game from the start of the century where they were chucking out PS2 games for every film that came out, and most of them were nigh on unplayable. They just got a game on the shelf with a film title on it just to try and sell copies to people who didn't know any better. This is not what I'm saying about this at all. I believe all of those reviewers that I've mentioned already who say this is a fun, enjoyable game. But it is a fun, enjoyable game that isn't a Witcher game, in my opinion. It is like my first Witcher game, and they've deliberately dumbed it down in order to make as much money as possible. So, technically speaking, it is a cash grab, in my opinion, but not with the general negative connotations that you would normally associate with a cash grab. The minis look gorgeous, and, as anyone who's watched my channel before knows, I love minis. And coming from The Witcher, the artwork's going to be fantastic. There's the Wild Hunt. They've got the solo and co-op expansion in there, which obviously, if you're not a fan of the competitive element, then you've got that as well. And yeah, the amount of content that they're unlocking through stretch goals and the popularity of the license. If you do back it, Alex is the expert on this, and I imagine he will do a back or not to back on this that hasn't come out at the time of me recording, but keep an eye on his channel to see that. But I would be very surprised if it was anything other than I would be surprised if it would lose money on the second-hand market, but again, with 22,000 backers, if there are people there who have the same feelings as me, who haven't maybe done the research that I have, there may be a fair few copies that do hit the second-hand market. So, it may be that you can get it cheaper used and that you won't get your money back. But I will be waiting with bated breath for Alex's opinion on that as well. But that's just my sort of amateurish guess at it based on the number of Alex's videos that I've watched, that hopefully I've picked up a little bit or two over the last 9 or 10 months. But I'm going to leave The Witcher Old World there and go on to the aforementioned Silver Coin Age of Monster Hunters. And this is a game, as you can see, Kickstarter or GameFound. It's still a number of months away from hitting crowdfunding. From what I understand, it's going to be towards the end of the year. And I was lucky enough that a month or so ago, one of the game designers, Lan, reached out to me and asked me to playtest the game. So this is a game that I have played in terms of a prototype and on Tabletopia, and it is really fun. But yeah, I'll just go through the blurb they've got there. So it's an adventure-like thematic Euro game with role-playing elements. The core gameplay is getting contracts on monsters and preparing for battles, in which case you then earn resources and coins. And over the course of 2 years in-game, you have to gather the most coins, and whoever gets the most coins wins. So it is competitive, but there's no Monster Hunter on Monster Hunter combat. It's purely about who can be the most successful Monster Hunter in that time. And as it's so early, there's not a huge amount of information on here. They've got the prototype rulebook, which I just want to highlight with the map here. And it's something I want to talk about, like with The Witcher Old World, I said how the exploration didn't feel true to the license, and that you would bounce around the world in one turn. And that is completely different here. Like, you've got all these different regions. I don't know if you can, I hope you can pick it up, but each of these little black marks on a road is 1 point of movement, and each turn you're going to have maybe 3 to 5 points depending on the weather, because the weather can impede your movement on this. Whether you've bought a horse gives you extra movement, whether you have abilities like you can teleport or whatnot. But generally you'll have, I think, 3 to 5 movement points. So you can see, if you're at the capital city here and you want to head down to the purple region, you're going to be hitting, there's hidden paths and things that may speed it up, but by the time you get down to the capital here, you've probably used 3 or 4 turns. And that is what the exploration should be, in my opinion. I want a world that feels massive, that I'm just a small part operating it, and I've got to really make the effort to pick what what my moves are going to be. Each step I take is valuable, because if I've got a contract up here, but it's weak to the magic down here, and I'm starting here, oh yeah, ideally I'd be able to go down here, get the learn the magic, so that I then have a bonus against the monster. But I'm going to lose so much travelling all the way down here to learn the magic, to then get back up here for one contract, that is it worth it? Should I just go straight to the monster and take it on? And yeah, I mean, looking at the monsters, this one is quite it's probably not the best card to illustrate the points I'm going to make, but it's the only image of one I could find on the website or in the rulebook at the moment. But I spoke in The Witcher, and that there aren't really any meaningful strengths or weaknesses. It makes no difference what gear you have, beyond the fact of how well you can chain it. It's going to be the same, largely the same, regardless of what you're fighting, really. Whereas the monsters here, you've got their health and their strength, which obviously is the health is how many times you have to hit it, the strength is their basic strength. Then they have bonuses depending on what region they may be on, so they may come out in a region where they're stronger. They can get bonuses based on if they're near water or in woodland, depending on the type of monster. That they could get bonuses whether it's raining or stormy or sunny. And conversely, they could be weaker in those as well. So, like I think in The Witcher, I can't think of the name, the ghost that you fight at midnight from a murdered, vengeful woman, that if you fight them at midnight, they're incredibly powerful, but if you fight them in the daytime, they're much weaker. And none of that, again, is in the Witcher Old World game, but that is in Silver Coin. They can have a huge variance in the monsters, that if you're fighting a basic monster at the worst time, so if it's in its favoured terrain, in its favoured weather, in its favoured region, then it's going to get a monster with 6 strength could now be a monster with 9 or 10. And that makes a huge difference in your ability to be able to combat it. And obviously then that has effectively monster weaknesses, or what they call them character strength bonuses. So if you have a certain type of magic, if you have certain colours of dye, if you have certain other benefits like potions, I think you can have that benefit you, or other abilities. It could be immune to physical damage, so you have to be sort of a character that uses mana energy to fight it. So there is far more tactics. And one other thing I forgot to mention about their strength. They have a required kingdom knowledge, so if you don't know enough about the world, if you haven't visited enough places to gain the knowledge, then if any shortfall in your knowledge against the required kingdom knowledge boosts the monster's strength further. So again, it's further increasing the odds that you're going to get murdered by this monster. And it's basically every issue that I have with The Witcher Old World in terms of it not honouring the cause of the license, in my view, is in Silver Coin Age of Monster Hunters. Now, I've spoken to Lan, I do wish, and I know I've told Lan this, that I would love some higher level monsters where there was sort of a cooperative element where you could, maybe the reward for killing that extra monster is worthwhile recruiting another monster hunter to join you. If you say you get 2/3 of the reward, they get 1/3, but they get an extra monster because they've joined you, which may boost them, but hopefully it'll boost you more. And then you'd be able to combine your strengths to maybe take advantage of any weaknesses, for example, but maybe that will come down the line. That's certainly something I would like to see for this game. And I will link to their website down below. As I said, I would recommend signing up to their newsletter because they've got them coming out fairly regularly. So again, they've got a closer look at the game mat. They've got some art in there, and they've started doing ones where they're talking about the gameplay and mechanics in a bit more detail. Or obviously you can read the prototype rulebook. I think I've clicked into the one that, yeah, so all explains the different phases and everything, so I'll let you explore that on your own volition if you want. But certainly for me, I will not be joining this 22,500 people who have gone in on The Witcher. And as I said, good luck to them. I hope they love it. I really do, because despite me not getting it, I absolutely want this space to succeed, and I want everyone introducing it to fall in love with it in the way I have in the last year. But I will not be backing it. I will be waiting for Silvercoin, and hopefully over the next 6 months I'll be able to get some gameplay footage on the channel, probably from the Tabletopia, which I'll need to get used to, because that was my first ever experience with it with Lan, and God love him, he was so patient with me because I had no idea what to do. I got my camera stuck looking straight down at the table for half of it, so I couldn't see what was going on, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But hopefully I'll iron all that out if we do a gameplay of that for the channel. I'll certainly look to interview him closer to the time as well, close to launch, because it is a game that I think deserves recognition and is a game you will want to check out. But I'm going to leave it there. That is my opinions on The Witcher Old World and Silvercoin Age of Monster Hunters. So thank you very much for watching. Oh, I will say actually, comment down below to see which one you prefer, which one you think is better suited to you. If you are backing The Witcher, what appeals to you about it? And if not, why not? Because I'd love to get a discussion going, bit of dialogue. But I will leave it there now. So thank you for watching. Look after yourself, stay safe, and have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye now.